December 16th, 1944. Morning breaks over the frozen Ardennes Forest. Amid snow-covered firs and dense fog, a small American unit lies in ambush. The ground is rock-hard. Breath freezes in the air. But what happens in this quiet corner of Belgium will go on to shape the outcome of the largest battle on the Western Front. Leading the group is a barely 20-year-old lieutenant, Lyle Bouck. His orders: hold a strategically vital road near the town of Lanzerath at all costs, against an overwhelming enemy force that slipped through the woods overnight without being detected. For weeks, Buck's intelligence and reconnaissance platoon of the 394th Infantry Regiment, made up of just 18 men, had been secretly intercepting German communications. What they discovered sent a chill down their spines. The Wehrmacht was preparing a massive offensive along the German-Belgian border. This wasn't a feint or diversion. It was a direct strike into the heart of the Allied lines. The goal: split the British and American armies and push through to the vital port of Antwerp. Buck understood exactly what was at stake, and he knew no one would come in time to save them. Lyle Bouck had been leading his unit for around 6 months. Despite his age, he was known for being highly disciplined, tactically sharp, and ice-cold under fire. His men weren't meant for open combat. They were scouts, saboteurs, observers, specialists in clandestine operations, elite troops, but without the equipment or support of a conventional infantry company. In their day-to-day work, they operated far behind enemy lines, sometimes up to 2 miles deep. They tracked troop movements, captured isolated German soldiers, and extracted information, sometimes using unconventional methods, then vanished before anyone knew they were there. These men were among the first in the U.S. Army to be awarded the Combat Infantryman Badge, a distinction recognizing bravery and combat excellence under fire. In early November 1944, Buck's platoon set foot on French soil with the 99th Infantry Division, landing at Le Havre and moving toward the Ardennes region. Allied command, bolstered by victories in the Ardennes Forest and the Vosges Mountains, believed the war could soon be over. Some officers even speculated it might end before Christmas, but not Buck. While others played cards or wrote letters, his unit set up listening posts along the German Siegfried Line. There, they heard the disturbing truth. Hitler wasn't preparing for surrender. He was planning one final, all-or-nothing counteroffensive: the Ardennes Offensive. The 6th Panzer Army, supported by the 1st SS Panzer Division, was preparing to punch through the lightly defended sector near Lanzerath. If they succeeded, the road to Liège, Brussels, and Antwerp would be wide open. Buck and his men were ordered to dig in on a ridge near Lanzerath, overlooking the road to the Losheim Gap, a crucial choke point for the German advance. They carved out interconnected trenches, reinforced their positions with pine logs, built makeshift bunkers, and added a .50 caliber machine gun they'd salvaged from a supply jeep. Then, on the eve of the German assault, came the crushing news: no anti-tank weapons, no artillery support, no air cover. The assigned tank destroyer company had withdrawn without warning. The radio message was blunt: artillery had higher priority targets. But Buck didn't back down. He divided his men into 2 squads of 9, supported by 4 forward artillery observers, men trained to direct howitzer fire, not engage in combat. The first assault 5:30 a.m. The ground shakes as the Germans unleash a 90-minute artillery barrage. Tree limbs and frozen soil rain down on the Americans, but the defensive positions hold. Buck's men wait, tense and silent. Then they see them. Over 700 German paratroopers, many of them Normandy veterans, marching in tight formation toward town. Their objective: take the pass. Buck gives the order to hold fire. Only when the lead elements reach the barbed wire do the Americans strike. Machine guns and carbines roar to life. German soldiers collapse. Screams echo through the valley. None of the first attackers even reach the fence. The Germans regroup. A company of more than 150 men is sent to flank the Americans through the wooded hillside. Under mortar and machine gun fire, they advance. But again, they're repelled. Private First Class Risto Milosevic operates a machine gun barefoot, his boots soaked, his socks drying when the fighting started. Beside him, his foxhole buddy fires in a trance-like state, switching between his M1 rifle, grease gun, and Colt 45, using whatever he can get his hands on. In the rear, German panzers are stuck in a traffic jam. The timetable is shattered. The entire offensive begins to wobble, all because of 18 men in a forest clearing no one thought to mark on a map. Hours pass. The fight drags into its 10th hour. Shells blast craters into the frozen ground. The Americans are now fighting at close range, sometimes just meters from the enemy. The Germans are so close, the Americans can see their faces, their eyes, their fear, their rage. Bouck's men cling to the hope of holding out until nightfall. Maybe then they can retreat under cover of darkness. But their ammunition is nearly gone. Their bodies are numb with cold and exhaustion. One final German assault comes from the forest, this time from the flank. As they move in, they trigger tripwires Bouck had rigged with hand grenades. The explosions rip through the woods. But it's not enough. The defenses are breached. The weapons are empty. Bouck gives the order to surrender. Not a single American dies that day. But they leave 92 enemy soldiers dead or wounded. More importantly, they shatter Hitler's timetable. What was intended as a rapid, overwhelming breakthrough turns into a sluggish, costly crawl. The German offensive loses its momentum, and ultimately, the element of surprise. The unit is captured and transported in a grueling 11-day journey deep into Germany. There, in an open-air prison camp during the brutal winter, they nearly freeze to death. Bouck survives, barely. In the end, the Battle of the Bulge costs the Wehrmacht more than 80,000 men and over 600 tanks, losses Germany would never recover from. It was the last major offensive of the Third Reich in the West, and it failed, in part because 18 Americans at Lanzerath held the line long enough to derail the entire plan. At the time, Bouck didn't know the impact of what they'd done. In captivity, he felt like a failure, haunted by the belief that he'd lost the hill. But history would prove otherwise. They hadn't won by ground taken. They'd won by time. And in war, sometimes that's everything. Years later, long after Bouck had returned to civilian life, their story was briefly mentioned in an obscure army publication. One of his men urged him, "Go public, get us the recognition we never got." And Bouck did. After tireless efforts, letters, calls, and official requests, he succeeded. On October 25th, 1981, The Intelligence and Reconnaissance Platoon of the 394th Infantry Regiment was finally awarded the Presidential Unit Citation, the highest honor for any U.S. unit in combat. Additionally, 5 men received the Distinguished Service Cross, 4 the Silver Star, and 10 the Bronze Star for valor. As historian Alex Kershaw later wrote, had they not stood and held the Germans and halted their attack, or rather postponed it for a crucial 24 hours, the Battle of the Bulge would have been a great German victory. But they did stand firm until the last round, and they wrote history deep in the fog of Lanzerath Forest.